I wanted to teach you, if fortunate.
Welcome to My Hill to Die On, episode 60.
Everyone has things that they're passionate about.
Things we want our friends to try and experience.
So we've convinced each other to try different things.
And we talk about these experiences to see if we can just get one more person
to join us on our Hill to Die On. We're still probably nowhere near our highest episodes, which were all guest episodes, I think.
The Casey list is still the highest by double.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
The one with Moltz is second.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That was Ted Lasso.
Yeah, Ted Lasso. And then third is Slowly Indoctrinate You with Good Fantasy. That's Stardust.
Yeah, that's Stardust.
What number was that? That was number 44.
Huh.
Yeah, Stardust. Vaccination updates, summer activities, and hiking stories. Interesting.
Yeah.
And then fourth is The Giver. And then fifth is Dan Moore.
Really? I would have thought he would have been higher.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait. Oh, sorry. Dan Moore is sixth. Fifth is 46. Still trying to make something good happen. What's that? That's number...
That's Princess Mononoke.
Oh, yeah.
Well, how's 49 doing?
49, yeah. You know, that's why it's surprising. Like, really, number 55 has a good story. 49 has the story. Like, there are some, like, key episodes. That's why I'm surprised that 54 is not that strong. Let me sort by number again.
Well, it's right after the Kung Fu Hustle episode, so you know.
We might have lost a few people on the Kung Fu. No, I don't think so. 49 is one of the higher ones.
Okay. I mean, that's Vincenzo.
Yeah, it's number 10. But 2 behind is, what's that book you brought that I didn't like? 30.
Oh!
The love story book, 37. Falling in love with somebody over letters. The
How You Lose the Time War.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that book.
I know you liked it. And then see, just one above that is Pay Respect to the Klingon Culture, right? That's a Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
Which generally don't do as well, I've noticed. But that one did well. And I think it's because there was a gap between that one and the next one. No, it's not that big of a gap. There was a 3-week gap, but that's not that big for us.
No. Matter of Honor, and that was right before our number 1 episode? Or number 2 episode. That's right before Stardust.
Yeah. Stardust, wait. Stardust was 3. Stardust is 3. First is Casey list, then Moltz, then that one.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry. It's our number 1 of just us.
Yes. So I don't know why some get higher than others.
I was just curious because it's one of those things that I try my best not to check simply because I don't want to get carried away by the emotions of like, oh, we're doing really well, or oh, people have stopped listening to us. I don't want to get like caught up in that because I want to still do this because I enjoy doing this.
Right, for the fun. Mm-hmm.
And so I try not to pay attention to it too much, but I am curious that I'm not just, essentially screaming into the void.
So basically what we're asking is for people to go back and listen to episode 54 because where it is now, it is the least popular episode so far, and it's slightly more than half of the next least popular episode. So it's behind by a lot. So people should all go listen to episode 54 because it was a good one. Encanto, my stroller story, and we had some good electrical incidents.
Although when you get to where we talk about the second book, The People of Sparks, you can skip that part.
Unless you want to hear an angry Ryan.
Yeah, I really did not like that book. It made me upset. I liked The City of Ember. The People of Sparks just made me angry.
Actually, well, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Ryan, because I was thinking about this as my daughters were watching YouTube on our TV.
Oh.
Is because I have children who are watching their own media. The model of television that they watch now, of course, is way different than the model of television that we grew up with, where we basically grew up with television that was picked by a suit in an office saying, I want this to show at this time, which had at least a level of censoring, but not censoring. I mean, it definitely had a level of censoring, but a level of thought into what was good for their brand.
Curating,
that's a good word.
It would have a level of curation.
Right. where you watch YouTube, and there are, of course, channels that are considering that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the channel even that my girls watch, I think mostly are. But still, they've discovered a channel recently where it's just a lot of Texans doing weird things for fun, right? And yeah, it's fun to watch them. I think that they're not going overboard. I don't think that. I think if they were, I think I would stop them. But to me, I think the thing that drives me the most nuts, well, because I am not putting my full attention to it, because usually I'm doing something else and the TV is on and I'm just listening to it, is the fact that they just keep yelling like, oh my, like they're just yelling at each other, reacting loudly.
Yeah.
It's just the whole thing is yelling.
It's
amped up.
It's the YouTube energy.
Yes.
That they feel like they need to do that kind of energy to keep their watchers.
Well, okay, because the difference is they're not producing a 26-minute or a 43-minute television show. They're producing a probably 10 to 15-minute video where you have to keep up the level so high that nobody doesn't skip to the next video in the middle of your thing.
Where they don't go, oh, there's a lull here, let me skip the next 30 seconds.
Right. Especially, an ad came up or a mid-roll ad came up, so we're going to lose them because there was a lull and a mid-roll ad came up and then they're just moving on to the next video. So, I'm trying to figure out, like, for a long time, actually till probably about just this last year, my kids were pretty much not allowed to watch anything. I mean, they didn't know this because it just hadn't popped up to them, but they weren't allowed to watch anything except what was on my server. I had a lot of stuff on my server. I've got a lot of movies and I had a lot of TV shows. So they were only allowed to watch those things. And only in the past year or so have they been allowed to watch YouTube. So we've had a little bit of discussion, like what makes a good video, especially with my youngest daughter, what makes good YouTube. I think we need to have some more of it. But, I'm trying to figure out, though, I'm not sure the suit in the office was necessarily making the wisest decisions. I think they were making decent decisions. I trust them more than I trust my daughters making decisions, probably. But I do like the freedom that YouTube presents, and I think there are a lot of good YouTube. Well, okay, let me say it this way. I think I trust the guy in the office a little bit more than I trust the YouTube algorithm. Not too much more, not to a large extent, but I think I do trust the guy in the office more than I trust the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah, okay, I can understand that. I will tell you that how I use YouTube, the algorithm does not work for me. I pretty much have found a couple of channels that I really like. Occasionally, very occasionally, I'll try something new, but most of the time, I'm just going straight to my subscribed tab and just watching anything new from my subscribed. That way, I know the quality of the video I'm going to watch. I know the personalities behind the videos I watch. And for the most part, if I am on YouTube, the first thing I will do, I just go to subscriptions and scroll over and see if there's anything new from the people who I already subscribe to.
One of the things that got me thinking recently too, though, is I think the algorithm could possibly be worse, although again, possibly only slightly worse, than the suit in the office in comparison of showing diversity, and because I think the algorithm will continue to reinforce the bias that I have, whereas the suit will probably reinforce his own bias. It might not be the bias that I have, so it could possibly be different that way. But I think that's another problem, is that neither of them go outside of a bias, whether it's reinforcing my bias or enforcing the bias of the suit in the office.
By the way, can I just say on a completely side note, it would be lovely if I'm watching YouTube, I will be usually watching it on my phone. I would love it if I could turn off shorts. I don't care about shorts. I'm not going to watch shorts.
It suffers from the same problem as YouTube, as you need to be amped up for the whole 15 minutes. It just has it in 45-second chunks. Are we old men, yelling at the youngins with that one?
So I take it you listen to that, Cortex.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think it, personally, the thing they didn't say on Cortex about this was, since it's 45 seconds to a minute, it is programming people to be expecting all of their information in 45 seconds to a minute. And so it kind of trains our brains to not be able to hold attention on anything over a minute long. And it also turns us into very much like mindless. The phrase they used was munchers, but mindless bingers is another way to just where you just keep swiping and swiping and swiping. Anyway, yeah, so when I use YouTube, I tend to just go to my subscriptions and watch from there. Watch people who I already know, already have enjoyed content from, and if people start to fall off the kind of content that I actually want to watch, I'll remove them.
Yep. It's a long process of thinking about what is my particular entertainment, right? And I think I had shared with you a while ago on this podcast too that it was a surprise for me to realize, I don't know, like 5 years ago now, that my primary form of entertainment is podcasts, which was a shock to me because I think it basically displaced television shows, right? Being my primary form of entertainment at the time, or possibly movies, but I think back then it was probably television shows. And I think now I'm in the midst of realizing that my primary form of entertainment is rotating more towards audiobooks. I don't think it's displaced podcasts yet, but I think it's getting close. It's got to be, well, of course, these aren't my only two forms of entertainment, but if you just choose those two, it's probably 60% podcast, 40% audiobooks. Television shows is definitely still in the mix, but if you just look at those two sources.
See, my problem is, if you are talking about pure time spent in them, for me, I think podcasts is still the winner, followed by video games and then audiobooks. My entertainment go in that order. And podcasts and video games are probably very closely tied. Audiobooks only fall to third because what will often happen to me is I will listen through a bunch of audiobooks in a row and then take a break from audiobooks and then listen to a bunch of audiobooks in a row and then take a break. And over the past 2 months, I have not really had the brain space for a full audiobook outside of a few choice books that have been added for our conversations here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in thinking about it in time, audiobooks might win, but the reason why I still place podcasts first is because I will, generally speaking, listen to podcasts, and then when I've completed my podcast queue, then move on to an audiobook. But then usually that audiobook will take precedence over podcasts until I've finished the book, and then I will, wait till I've caught back up on my podcast queue and then listen to another audiobook.
That does make sense because I've just gotten to a point in my podcast queue where I've now finally, after a long time, caught up with all my podcasts after my last spree of books. And so I'm really getting to the point where I'm considering which book I'm going to jump into next. And have already decided that I have to do a lot of reading over the summer, if for no other reason than for a class that I need to write.
I guess one of the things, too, that this was making me think of it, especially in terms of thinking all the way down to YouTube Shorts and TikTok and things, is that I think I've realized that I now tend to like media that is longer than media that is shorter. I like books over most podcasts because I've realized that now, actually. I'll get to, in terms of trying to empty out my podcast queue, I sometimes realize I get to about 5 podcasts left, and I realize that I've been pushing these 5 podcasts down in the queue and I just don't want to listen to them, so I delete them and then go listen to the book instead. It's not that those podcasts were short, but they were an hour long. But
it's the fact that I feel like for the books, because they have a beginning, middle, and end, and they tend to be longer, and podcasts because it's a reoccurring thing, you get a more full experience in the longer period of time. So in a book, you get more out of it. Let's say it's a 6-hour book. Well, you would get more out of those 6 hours than you would in listening to 6 individual podcasts because it is one continuous story. At least that's how I see that.
Yeah, I think that's what it is too. I've been now able to realize and look out for that. Like, okay, these are the podcasts that are just piling up at the bottom. I'm not going to get to them. I'm just going to delete them. Sometimes I make the decision to maybe hold on to some of those podcasts, but mark them mentally as that, Sometimes there's just time where I can't spend listening to a book. It's just too mentally taxing because I can't listen to books all the time. Podcasts fill I would like something to entertain me, but not take up all my brain power. And podcasts usually work the best for that. So I do save some of those podcasts just in case I run out.
Well, I will say that for me, the thing that I love about podcasts as well is the fact that programming, I cannot listen to a book and program.
Oh, no. I can't even listen to podcasts during programming. I can't do that.
If it is essentially the small programming where it's essentially me going through and debugging, I can do it. If it is actually thinking through the back-end processes on how I'm going to build this entire thing, definitely not. But if it is test, see what happened, oh, there's the error. Test, see what happened, oh, there's the error. That's perfect podcasting for me.
So anyway, it's just interesting. Is the suit that has decided what's on TV much better than the algorithm? I'm not so sure. I think it's about the same because they both have negatives. I think that a lot of it is just be aware of what you're consuming. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot that rides on that.
Yeah, and then you have to ask, how are you consuming? So, for example, like I said, for me, it is I open up YouTube, I check out what's new in the people who I am subscribed to. If I am feeling adventurous, I might go to things related to the people who I am subscribed to. But most likely, no.
Well, and one of the things I do have on my phone, I haven't used it much recently it comes up all the time, but I do have a screen time limit, I think of 20 minutes on YouTube. Maybe 30. I think it might be 30 minutes. Yeah, it's got to be 30 minutes because sometimes I can get into a second video. And basically, it's not there to stop me because the warning comes up and then you can enter your passcode and allow more time. It's not there to stop me. It's there to say, hey, have you gone on to something that is now you're just scrolling and wasting time?
Is this a good use of your time? Kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Is it do you need to move on? Which I have a 5-minute limit on Facebook. 5 minutes gives you enough time to open up the notification that came in that says, hey, somebody asked you this question on Facebook. It gives you enough time to open that up, read it, respond, and then be done. You don't need to sit there scrolling through the pointless newsfeed and gain nothing.
Or the Facebook message debates.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Don't need to do anything there. It's enough time to respond to the notification. And then it says, hey, your Facebook time's done for today. And fine. Perfect.
Yeah. I'll have to look more into screen time because I really don't think about screen time.
It's almost just a handy, hey, remember, you could be doing something more important.
You could be doing something more useful. Yeah, I might have to look into that because I will say that I haven't gone on to other YouTube things too often, but once in a while I will just watching things from the people who I am subscribed to and realizing that I'm just ending up going into their backlog of things that they posted 6 years ago. Okay, why am I watching this far back? And it's because I had clicked on one thing and then clicked on another.
Well, there was a channel I was subscribed to for a while that was one of those, top 10 things about this. And it would always have titles like that. Top 10 things about this. Top 10 things of this. Top 10 things of this. Oh, wouldn't you like to know top 10 things of this? It was just very clickbaity. And some of them were interesting to me. Oh, yeah, I'd like to know top 10 of that or what they think the top 10 of that. See if I agree with it because it was on Star Trek. So I have my own opinions.
You have opinions on Star Trek?
I do. But then I realized that this is pointless. I know all the top 10 things. This was one of the reasons why this warning was helpful because I would watch 3 of those videos. But then I realized that I just don't care what they think anymore. It's not adding any knowledge to me. Maybe it's reminding me of some Star Trek trivia that's kind of fun, but I really don't need that either in my life. I don't need more Star Trek trivia. Too much is floating around in there. So I decided to unsubscribe. And since I'm subscribing from that channel, that has helped a bit with my need to listen to the screen time warnings. Now the screen time warnings just tell me it's time to go to bed.
Yeah, no, since I've been a lot better about just going to the subscribe list, I have 10 channels I'm subscribed to. And so if all of those 10 have nothing new, what'll happen is I'll open YouTube, see nothing new, close it down.
Mm-hmm. But I'm definitely enjoying my books. I started the year with the goal of reading 10 books this year, which is like massive for me, probably. It probably would tie last year, but like the year before that, I had read like 4 books, maybe for the podcast. So I started with 10, and then of course I had finished 10 in like March, and I was like, okay, I need a new goal. So I went up to 40 books. I was like, well, let's see if I can get to 40 books.
And are you already there?
No, I'm not there. Goodreads was telling me that, 40 books, you silly, you're way ahead of that goal. If you keep reading at the pace you're reading, you will beat that goal by a lot. So 40 is not a good goal. So I was like, oh, well, what goal would be good? So then I went up to 50, and then it said, no, you're still 2 books ahead of 50 books a year. So I said, oh, okay, well, I'll set it at 52. The same number of books as weeks. Can I get to that goal? And it said, yep, you're on pace for that. So since I set that maybe a month or 2 ago.
Have you slowed down your pace?
Nope, I'm still on pace for that. So I've read 2 books in the past week. So that helped a bit.
You're doing really well this year then.
I have read 22 books of 52 in 2022. So it says I'm on pace. Now, again, I read 2 books for school, 2 nonfiction school books, but I'm including books I read.
Yeah, I will say that part of one of the struggles that I had was I have been reading a book that is very like emotionally fraught is the best way to describe it. And so it feels like it takes a lot out of me reading this book. And so I'm sitting here and realizing that I haven't finished this book, which I think I only have like 3 hours left of this book left. Maybe 4. And it's, I think, a 12 or a 15-hour book. And I've just been sitting at the last 4 hours because I know what it is. It's the state where you're like, I don't want to finish this book because I know it's going to end sadly.
And poorly.
Well, possibly poorly. And so I'm sitting there going, I like this book. I like what it's done so far. I have enjoyed my time in this book, but I have not picked up this book in, I think it's been over 2 weeks that I've been sitting at that point where I'm just like, I should just finish this book now. And then I'll read something silly and happy.
Yeah. Just today, I started reading a book, because To Be Taught If Fortunate was shorter, and I read that again. And I am counting To Be Taught If Fortunate because I haven't read it in the calendar year of 2022. I did read it last year, but I'm counting it again.
You did read it in 2021?
So I'm counting it again. I did not count The Galaxy in the Ground Within twice, though. That only counted once. And I read another, 7-hour book since I just finished that a few days ago. I'm going to go for a little bit longer, so I'm starting a 12-hour book. We'll see how that goes.
See, my problem is the 12 to 15-hour books are my short books.
To be fair, I think I have 3 books on here that are less than 2 hours in my 22 books. But again, I have some other books on here that are 20 hours. So it's evening out. Yeah, I have at least 2 books on here that are 20 hours in my 22 of the year so far.
Yeah, it looks like the majority of my books are either right at the 8-hour mark or 15 hours plus. Those are pretty much my 2 categories, is 8 hours or 15 or more hours. The summer is usually when I get most of my reading in, so I'll hopefully see if I can catch up to you over the summer.
Sounds good.
Because I have been slipping a little bit.
We can challenge each other according to our own goals. You don't have to beat me in number. You just have to beat me in percentage of your goal.
Oof.
If you can set an accurate goal.
That is a good question. Can I set an accurate goal? Especially because I spent one day this weekend just setting up my calendar for all of the things I want to accomplish over the summer. And it's already feeling like I might be biting off more than I can chew over the summer, but we'll see what I can do.
Well, one of the things that did help me along, well, plus I've made you read 4 books already this year.
And haven't I made you read another couple?
At least 1 in here. 2. I see 2 of your books in here.
Let's see.
Guards, and Alloy of Law.
Oh, yeah. And then
next week, the next one will be a book too.
Yeah, well, I have a bunch of books coming up actually for you, so look forward to that.
But one of the things that did help me was I set alone in my library, because some of the books I wanted to read were on the popular side. So they were like, 10-week holds. So I just set up the hold in my library, and then all of a sudden it came due. So it's like, well, I got to listen to it now because I only get this book for a while. And if I don't finish it, I'm not going to get it for another 10 weeks. So that did help too, because it's like, nope, I'm setting up a hold. And when it comes, and I got to listen to it. So that was a nice thing that held me to it.
Huh?
And I have read 2 books that my daughters have read in school recently too, alongside them, which makes them a little nervous, but it was kind of fun to talk to them about it.
Well, part of the thing that for me is going to be a lot of the reading is, as I said, one of the things I need to do over the summer is I need to write a new class, which means I need to reread some fantasy to make sure that I am choosing the right books for that class. We shall see where I end up, because one person did suggest a book to me that did not fit into my normal definition of fantasy, but will definitely fit into a good conversational piece that at the very least might be a good circle book.
One of the reasons too is I definitely have a lot of books that I have purchased over time that now is just in my list of things to read. Just trying to catch up on my books.
And just steal mine.
I know, I do. I just steal yours. But no, if you look at my list, where's my books to read?
No, I'm just playing.
On my current list, I have 6 books of yours to read. I'm sure there's more that you've given me that I would like to read, but on my current list of 60 books, 6 of them are yours.
No, I was just saying that because I was like, I'm still laughing a little bit because I do remember the fact that you have several books on your hills for future hills that,
that
I was
yours.
Like, oh wait, no, I bought that one.
I know. I just added another one because I finished Piranesi, and it is now added to my list of things that I'm going to talk about at some point. And I think you bought that book.
I did.
I think it was you. Because I was about to buy it, and then you said you had it, so then I didn't buy it.
Yes, because I bought a bunch going, I'm going to read these, and then the school year happened.
Because that one was on my list to buy.
I'm catching up on these things that I've bought and was like, all right, the summer is my time to read all of these. And you're like, oh, I've already read it and I want to talk about it.
Catch up, Ryan. The book I'm reading now, the 12-hour book, I'm getting from the library. But I was going to read one of yours next again.
That's fine. I would love to do a game corner this week because there is a game I really want to talk about.
And I was realizing that the last game corner you did during Alloy of Law is a review of 2 games. I don't know if you did them during Game Corner or not, but it's a review of 2 other games you had talked about. So
yeah, it was basically going back and talking about Elden Ring and Returnal. Well, the reason why I really want to do a game corner this time is because a few weeks ago, I finished a game with a friend of ours who has been on the podcast a couple of times, Nash. We were playing a game called It Takes Two. It Takes Two got several awards last year, and I'm just going to say right now, it deserved every one of those awards. It was a lovely, lovely game. So, the basic premise of the game is you are 2 parents named Cody and May, and they are a married couple and have a daughter named Rose. And at the beginning of the game, they are fighting, and they decide that the only path forward is for them to get a divorce. Rose, as expected, does not take this news well. And so she goes and just like very, very much I'm going to go and play in my room now reaction to the initial announcement. And so she then takes these 2 handmade dolls that she has made and essentially cries on top of the dolls and just wishes with all her heart that there is some way that her parents can just get along again. The next scene opens with the parents finding themselves trapped inside the dolls' bodies. So you are controlling the 2 dolls. And this game is designed around co-op play, around playing 2-player. And so one of the players will control Cody, the husband, and one will control May, who is the wife. And they are guided along the entire way by a sentient talking book named Dr. Hakim, who talks all about collaboration and how one can collaborate. And apparently, what I learned from this game is collaboration is all in the hips.
Okay.
That is one of the things he says. Anyway, so the game is these two trying to find some way to get back into their bodies. And it starts off horribly, just awful, because they wake up in the body, have no idea how it happened, and find out that Rose had cried on the dolls. And so Cody goes, oh, this is a magic spell. So we just have to, reverse the magic spell by making her do it again. Like cry on the dolls again. So the first couple of levels of the game are you doing everything you can to get to your daughter so that you can make her cry. Parents of the year. And then when that and all the things that they do to make that happen doesn't work, they need to go on a secondary part of the adventure where they actually learn to collaborate. They learn to work together. And yes, the book constantly talks about collaboration, which, let me just tell you, as a person who works at the school that we do, and how we talk about one of our goals for our students is to be effective collaborators.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, now every time I hear the word collaboration, I am hearing Dr. Hakim's voice talking about collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So I might have started giggling in some of our meetings because people are talking about collaboration, and I'm thinking of a talking book talking about how collaboration is in the hips.
Mm-hmm.
I digress. So yeah, it is a wonderful game. Part of the thing that's really cool is each level you get different abilities and different powers based on things that are happening in the world around them. So, for example, in one scene, May, who is also an engineer, finds a hammer and uses this hammer to open some paths. And Cody picks up some sentient nails that he's able to throw and whistle to come back to him. In other scenes, things like, what was one that was really cool? There was one that Cody gets the power to stop and rewind time, and May gets the ability to be in two places at once to clone herself. And so it's all based on various things that they either say sarcastically to each other, and then Dr. Hakim's like, all right, let's give you those powers. But it is a very good game, and I am making this sound very light and very cheerful. There are some really, really sad things that happen in this game because of all the things that they are trying to do. And the two characters throughout the game are constantly criticizing each other until they finally get to the point where they start trying to see things from the other's perspective. And I will say that the game does end on a very hopeful and happy note. That is as much as I'm going to say. There are a lot of things that I'm skipping over because I don't want to ruin the emotional beats of this story.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a solid, solid game. Like I said, it is built off of having two players. It is built off of having you and one other person playing this game throughout the whole thing together. And it is hilarious, and it is fun, and it is emotional, and it deserves every award that it won. The BAFTAs gave it the Best Multiplayer and Original Property. The DICE Awards gave it the Game of the Year and Outstanding Achievement in Game Design. Game Developers Choice Awards, they won Best Design. The Game Awards won Game of the Year and Best Family Game and Best Multiplayer Game. So, like I said, it won so many awards and deserves them all because it is a wonderful, happy game that also has a lot of really cool game elements and just a wonderful, wonderful game. Yeah.
Sounds good. I played a little bit more Disco Zoo.
Yeah. Kind of expected that. All right, I'm going to spoil this game for Nate. If you do not want to get spoiled, and I suggest if you're going to play it, don't get spoiled, skip ahead now. The story does end on a very happy note. Essentially what happens is they wake back up in their bodies after doing all this stuff and realize that Rose is no longer in the house because she has internalized so much of their fighting and blames herself for all of it. And it's awful, but she decides that, oh, you two can get along again if I'm no longer here, and so has run away. And so they wake up, the house is empty, they both run out, go to the nearest bus stop where they find Rose before she gets on the bus, and they basically have this huge heart-to-heart with this whole new perspective and telling her that she's not the cause of any of their arguments, and regardless of everything, they will always love her, no matter what happens. And then I think it gives the impression that they're going to try to resolve their arguments and try to patch things up. But regardless of what happens, they're always going to try to put Rose first, is what it looks like.
Sounds good. So, Ryan, I had you read a book where there's travel involved.
Yes, travel to new places.
Travel to new places. So I said that let's pick 2 first impressions of new places.
First impressions of new places. Oof. That was a interesting prompt. I struggled with trying to come up with good stories behind them because there's a lot of places that I've been, but first impressions puts a whole different tint on it.
I agree.
So would you like to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. One of the first places that I'll pick is I climbed Mount Fuji first when I was in college, and I came to Japan in college. And that was a lot of fun. And I'm glad that I had a guide at the time. I think this was his second time up Mount Fuji that season, the summer season, because it's too snowy in the winter to climb safely. And I'm glad that he showed me how to do it because really the way that it's done mostly is you climb at night and you end up at the top of the mountain for dawn, watch the dawn, and then climb down. And I'm glad that he showed me that way of doing it. It was very nice. And it's just gorgeous and just a wonderful experience. And it's a bit commercialized at the top, at least in the season when I climbed, because we had climbed pretty much peak season, and you're passing just loads of people who are working their way up the mountains, who came via bus, who are all in a line, all walking up together. And I was pretty much probably in my peak climbing, and just realizing that every 2 switchbacks close to the very top, you'd be running out of oxygen. So every 2 switchbacks, I'm just taking a 2-minute break just to catch my breath. Because there's no oxygen. But, I had been running all season, so, it wasn't any of that. No, it's just so thin up there that I'm just taking my breath. But it's just pretty at the top. You get a nice bowl of warm curry. It's just a fun thing. And then climbing back down is not a bad experience, too. But climbing back down is more of a hike than you expect it. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. I will say that, climbing back down was rough on my knees.
Oh, it's rough. Yep, yes, it is very rough. It's more rough on your knees than climbing up. Yeah, down is worse on your body than going up. Mm-hmm. It's surprising. You don't get exhausted, but it's just hard on your body.
You feel the impact. I don't know which path you went down, but the one that I went down, it felt like essentially loose gravel the entire way down.
Yeah. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, and so the entire time you're trying to grip with your feet to make sure that you don't slip. Mm-hmm. But also every step you take, it's a big impact on your knees.
Mm-hmm. It is. Very pretty, fun to do. So yeah, if they're coming to Japan, you should see if you can work in a climb to Mount Fuji. But I guess you got to be doing that in the July-August time frame. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's not going to work out.
I will say that I'm a big fan of Fuji, and I think everyone should do the climb once. Mm-hmm. The problem is when you've done it and then you have friends who want to go and they've not done it yet, and then you end up needing to go with them.
Doing it again. Mm-hmm.
Everyone should do it once. maybe multiple times, but
Yeah, I've done it twice now, but it's not that bad.
yeah, no. I will say that I did it when I was not in my peak shape. I was climbing a lot more at the time, but I wasn't quite in my peak shape. And so I was taking significant breaks. But yeah, I did the whole night climb thing as well, watched dawn from the top. Yeah, it was great.
Good stuff.
So when you originally suggested this, I had some hard decisions to make because for me, one of the things was, where have I been? What have I done that really left a big impression on me? I mean, there's a lot of places that I think left an impression based on the people I was with or the events surrounding me being there. But I think one of the ones that I do want to bring up is just simply my first time coming to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
When I was going for my undergrad, I decided that for my senior year, I wanted to study abroad. And so in the first semester of my senior year, I got a chance to come to Japan and specifically to a university in Chiba. Now, this university is very pretty, but it is also a large part of the area surrounding it is very residential at best, and a lot of farms in a different direction. In one direction, you end up going towards a city, but the city is very residential, and in the other area, it's just nothing but farms and nature preserves and just a beautiful, beautiful place. So my first experience really coming to Japan was that school. And everything that I experienced there was just a very welcoming environment. It was just just a beautiful location. Like I said, it was in Chiba, but it was also in this forested area with lots of farms nearby. And that really was my first experience in Japan, but I only lived there for 6 months. Then a couple years later, I ended up getting a chance to go back to Japan as a assistant language teacher in a city called Ome. Now, Ome is technically in Tokyo, if you want to use the broadest definition of Tokyo.
When you're talking about rural Tokyo.
Yeah, we are talking rural Tokyo. So my technically second impression of being in Japan was this rural Tokyo. Ome is, again, a lovely, lovely area. Lots of greenery, surrounded by mountains, lots of fresh air. The Tama River cuts right through it. I believe I've told the story of me falling into the Tama, or
Crossing the river?
Crossing that river. That is in that area. It is just a beautiful area. And so my first two experiences living in Japan, and specifically living very near Tokyo, had nothing to do with the downtown crush of Tokyo. So when I constantly would hear about people talking about Japan and Tokyo and them describing the scramble and things like that, that was not my image of Tokyo. My image of Tokyo and my image of Japan were all of these very rural environments. So I thought to myself, you know what? That was my first experience with Tokyo, and that was my impression of Japan, was all of these very idyllic farm areas and these farm communities and mountains and trees. Now, I did eventually get in towards the city itself and experience that, but I will always remember my first experiences in Japan were always surrounded by lots and lots of farm areas.
It is pretty out there.
It is very pretty out there. I mean, when I lived in Ome, when I wasn't working, I was going on walkabouts.
Mm-hmm.
I would just wander through the local mountains, and I have a lot of times where I got really lost and really turned around, but I loved that area.
Very nice. My second pick, this is pretty soon after we purchased our car.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of told the story before on the podcast, I think, but Just after we purchased our car, we went to Izu Peninsula, and we usually stay at one hotel, but this time we were going to try another one. And the pictures on the travel website looked very nice, and I was like, let's try this hotel. It's different. It's a slightly different area than we normally go to. We can visit the favorite places we normally go to, but this is a slightly different area, so we'll try a few different things here. So when we got to this hotel, we went up to the room, and the room was not at all like the pictures. I mean, the carpet was stained in a bunch of places. The chairs were very old. There wasn't much furniture in the first place. I was like, wait a minute, this is not what was pictured. And looking back later, I had found that the pictures were depicting one side of the hotel, and we had gotten a room on the other side of the hotel. So I was quite disappointed. My daughters ended up having a great time. Since the rooms were fairly empty of furniture, because I think we stayed in a room that had tatami mats and tatami futons. I don't think there was a Western-style bed in that place. I think I was expecting a Western-style bed because that's what the picture showed, but I was fine with the tatami. That's not a big deal, but they had a lot of fun because all the futons all fold up, so you can just run around the room, which is nice. But my daughters had a great time, but me and my wife, was definitely upon arriving, I was very frustrated. It had taken us a while longer to get down there than expected. And because we were driving on very thin country roads with our brand new car, my wife was very nervous. We made it through without a scratch, but my wife was very nervous. And then we get there, and there's this disgusting room that we land in, and very upset. The whole vacation ended up being fine. Not great, but fine. So we salvaged the vacation, that's for sure. But the rooms was just very frustrating. There was a lot of noise from the neighbors. The guy at the front desk, which is basically a window, it was more like a window at an apartment complex where you can see it at the guard than it was a front desk. There's a tiny window and you can see into a room and there's somebody sitting in there. That was the front desk. It was not like a desk with people behind it, like you would normally think, hotel. So anyway, there was a few things that were disappointing about this place. But yeah, we survived. I mean, we had this other idea in our head that we're going to stay in this, decent hotel. And we get there and it was not a decent hotel. That was one of the more like, oh my goodness, this place is not at all what we had pictured places. So it was very disappointing all around. But I don't think I'm even going to go back there to try the nicer side of the hotel. I don't think it's worth it.
Well, for my second pick, I thought I would also choose a place in Japan. Rather than my first impression of Japan as a whole, I thought I would pick one of my vacations. So this was back when, I could do vacations.
Mm-hmm.
So I am a person who, due to the situation of the world, has been very cautious. So I have not gone on any trips in the past 2 years. Yeah, so I have not gone on any trips in the past 2 years. And before that, I pretty much, every spring break, I would make sure to go somewhere in Japan. And just go somewhere I hadn't been. And I miss that tradition because it definitely got me to experience a lot of areas that I was able to go to. But like I said, the past couple of years, traveling has not been as viable a thing. And so I have been cautious. But anyway, the trip that I remember perhaps the best was my trip to Hiroshima. It was a very good trip. I want to say it's now been 4 years. 4 years since I've been there. So when I went, I decided to go to Hiroshima. I took the Shinkansen down there, and then I arrived. The first day I stayed at a hostel, and then the second day I went to Miyajima. And this is when I felt it was okay to have one big splurge in my year. If I save up really well, I can have one big event where I'm going to just splurge on myself. So I went to Miyajima, and I got a rather nice ryokan that I stayed at.
Mm-hmm.
And it was beautiful. So essentially what happened was I went there and they brought me a 8-course meal, I think it was. There were a bunch of small courses, but I mean, it was an 8-course meal with all sorts of wonderful foods. Miyajima itself was beautiful. It had this wonderful little mountain that I was able to climb, but also I did a night cruise that was also set up by the ryokan that I was staying at.
Oh, really?
Where essentially what happened was we got on the boat, and then while we were on the boat, they would sail underneath the floating torii gate. So one of the things about Miyajima that everybody points to is there is a big red torii that actually is built
in the water.
In the water, essentially. It's a place where, depending on the tide, you might actually see more of the foundations that it's built on, but for the most part, it's usually partially underwater. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing sitting right in front of the shrine that it leads to. And so at night, we were able to get a cruise that would essentially just cruise directly through the gate and circle around a couple of times. And if you ever go at night, they light up the torii gate so it just glows. Also, because it is spring break time that I always took these trips, it was also peak sakura season for everything. So this island is just, to use the word beautiful just so many times feels redundant at this point, but it is incredibly breathtaking. If you have not gone there, I highly recommend it.
Yep.
Like I said, I did splurge, and so I stayed on the island one night, stayed there, climbed up the mountain the next morning, and then, which, by the way, I did not realize that until on my way back down that I missed seeing the sign that was clearly marked at the foot of the hill that just said, I think it was Mamushi. It is the Japanese moccasin or Japanese pit viper.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, apparently there were some pit vipers on the trail that thankfully I never ran into any.
Yeah, not too many snakes in Japan.
Not too many snakes in Japan, but the ones that are there are...
Yeah, not all of them are healthy for you.
No, this specifically is not healthy for you. So, yeah, like I said, it was a wonderful trip. After that, I went back to Hiroshima for a couple of days, stayed at a hostel, and just went through the entire town visiting all of the major sites, including the dome.
The A-bomb dome.
Yeah, the A-bomb dome and the memorials. And yeah, if anybody ever thinks about actually producing more bombs of that nature, part of me just wants to tell them, go and visit this area and tell yourself that again. I don't think you can when you come face to face with the weight of what those things actually do. But that's, that's how I see the world.
Yep. It is a very powerful sight. Let's do some sugar.
Yeah, let's go get some sugar.
I think I brought both of these today, right?
I do not remember.
It's been a while because we had a few pile up since we haven't had some tastes in the recent episodes.
Yeah, I do think that the Kit Kat is definitely yours. I'm not sure about the soda. Probably, though, because I can't imagine
that you would have bought Calpis. That you would have bought Calpis soda.
No.
Citrus. How do you read that in English?
Yeah, that's weird. Citrus tol. I'm not sure. Kanji, I'm not good at it.
If I just run it through Google, citrus and scented hops.
Hops?
Scented hops. Hoppo. Anyway, let's just call it a weird citrus drink.
Yeah.
Fragrant hops.
Fragrant hops. Yeah, that's weird citrus.
Yeah. Some kind of Calpis soda citrus.
Yes.
Something weird. It looks like it's maybe something to do with the fruit peels. Maybe.
Well, I mean, that's how you get...
To the fruit on the inside?
No, I was just going to say that actually, some cooking actually will grate pieces of the rind into...
Yes.
Because the rind itself is very intense flavors.
Mm.
It's just because it's the rind, it tends to also carry with it a lot of thickness, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you'll grate it often. So it might just be trying to kind of extract the flavors of the rind.
Mm-hmm.
Because thankfully, Calpis did not make me actually drink a rind.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
It's a Calpis soda.
my old arch nemesis,
Mm-hmm.
Calpis.
Calpis soda. Let's see if the citrus makes it taste better. Ooh, smells very citrusy.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I would say that it's very refreshing.
Yeah.
The citrus adds a very nice tang.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to decide how I feel about it. It's one of the less offensive Calpises.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it feels somewhere between... It's a Calpis soda, so it still has that stuff in it. But I also feel like this has a bit more... Like a stronger, more intense version of Sprite mixed in.
Yes.
Feel like that's probably the best way I can describe that. Is it's Calpis soda with a stronger, more intense Sprite in there.
Yeah, I would think so. Because Sprite is not necessarily the sourness of the lemon. It's got the lime in there too, right?
Yep.
Yes, I would agree with that.
It is more intense, though.
More than Sprite, yes.
It does kind of taste a little bit like you've bitten into the rind.
Mm-hmm. I think if that's what they were going for, I think they've succeeded.
Yeah. I don't think they should have gone for it, though.
Well, I'm thinking okay. I think I'm going to give it as high as a 7. It's not a favorite, but it's going to be good.
5. 5.
Oh, which might be a good score for you in Calpis, huh?
Well, no, because peach espresso Calpis is probably my highest Calpis.
Mm-hmm.
Because peach is a solid flavor. No, honestly, I think I'm saying it's 5. Maybe I could be convinced to somehow round it up to a 6.
Don't stress yourself.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's a fine drink.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is I think it adds to Calpis. I don't think I could drink it frequently, but as a nice diversion from the standard Calpis, it's pretty good. 7 might still be a bit high on my end, but I don't think I want to go as low as 6. I think I'm going to stick it at a 7.
Well, I'm looking through my other ones that I've given 5s to and 6s to, and I can't put it on par with the honey lemon cider,
Mm-hmm.
which, I mean, still wasn't great. I can't believe that I gave Nothing to Cocoa Pine that high.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's a solid 5. It's a solid 5. It passes. I will say, because of the Sprite kind of feel, it is very refreshing, but I feel like I get a tang of an aftertaste that I'm not a huge fan of.
I can definitely see that.
And I think that's where I fall. That's what takes it from a 6 to a 5 for me, is the aftertaste.
All right, let's see what we have here. This is Kit Kat Chocolate Orange.
Kit Kat Chocolate Orange. It looks interesting. I'm very hopeful for this one. I have high hopes, and I am afraid of that, because usually when I have high hopes, they are mercilessly dashed.
Yeah, we'll see. I think you could be right.
About my high hopes being mercilessly dashed, or?
Mm-hmm. Chocolate and orange, as a combination of flavors, has sometimes been okay, but I wouldn't say that it's always okay. I am hesitant like you.
Yeah. Well, I think there's only one way we can be sure.
Let's find out what it's like. Oh, by the way, there were only 10 Kit Kats in this bag.
Well, it is a chocolate-looking Kit Kat.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And inside looks like a normal color. That is an intense flavor.
It is better than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was a bit worried. As you say, the orange is very intense, but I was worried that the chocolate would be less somehow. But even with the intensity of the orange flavor, which is pretty high up there, I think the fact that it's still just a chocolate Kit Kat, the chocolate held its own at least.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I do think that the mixture of chocolate and orange does succeed much better than I had expected. It is not failing. It's probably better than white with salt, for me anyway. You had given that a higher ranking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a 5. It's better than what I expected, but I expected failure, and I think it maybe just passes.
All right.
Again, I think still chocolate and orange just together are not my favorite.
All right. So you remember how I said last time where white with salt, I was trying to decide between a 6 and a 7, and I ended up saying that it's a low 7. This one's a high 6.
Mm-hmm.
It is not on par with apple cinnamon and not on that level, but it is better than some of the other 6s that I've had. I like the tanginess with the chocolate. For me, I like that combo. I will say that if I had any more of these, I probably would get sick of it pretty quickly. It is a very intense flavor. It is one of those flavors that having few, I think, is probably for the best.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you overindulge, I feel like this would be one of those ones where you just be like, now I'm sick of this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think giving it a slightly higher 6, like something that doesn't round up to 7.
You mean 6?
No, I mean like maybe a 6.3, 6.4.
Mm-hmm. 6. 6 is good.
One of these days, I will convince you to let me have a decimal point.
Alrighty, Ryan. I made you read a book.
Yes, you had me read a book.
I had read this last year over a Christmas break, I believe. It is yet again a Becky Chambers book, which we have just recently finished, her 4-book Wayfarer series. And I don't know where this comes in her publication bibliography.
2019, that's what I know.
Yeah, 2019. Does that fall in between? No, it is before Galaxy and the Grumthins. It doesn't fall chronologically in between. She has her Wayfarer series, and she just started her new Monk and Robot series, which I have yet to read. Which is yours? Which was the one I put off because I was going to read it, but I was like, I still want to talk about To Be Taught Fortunate first.
I feel like I need to start reading all the ones that you're going to read before you get to them, just so I can be like, nope.
You're going to take it from me so that I'm not taking it from you.
Yeah, because you're already taking 2 books from me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, the Monk and Robot ones are novellas also, so they're shorter. They're not as long as the Wayfarer.
Yes, they are.
Anyway, yes, if you have not listened to the Wayfarer stuff, go back and listen to that. But
this is also not in that universe.
No.
And so if you want to read this one and get a feel for her writing.
That's true. Mm-hmm. This would be a good way to start.
Yeah.
Yes, because actually I do want to make some comparisons.
Yeah, let's make some comparisons later. But it might be a place in which you could start.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Let's let's move into spoilers. So go ahead, Ryan.
All right. So before we go into spoilers, as always, let's do our necessary. This is your spoiler warning. If you haven't read the book yet, please turn off the podcast, read the book, and then come back later.
It's not long.
It's not long at all. And it's a pretty quick read. Now, if you have read it and want a refresher, here we go. Let's give you a summary. So, To Be Taught If Fortunate is the story of 4 astronauts. Ariadne, an engineer, and the lens in which we see the story. Elena, a meteorologist and the most senior member of the crew. Chikandi, a biologist. And Jack, a geologist. The 4 travel 14 light years away to visit 4 planets in a Goldilocks zone and examine them, gathering data on all the life forms that can be found there. And the entire book is essentially their journeys to these 4 different planets. On the first planet, Acor, which is mostly covered in ice, they find some sea life forms living underneath the ice in the water, beneath the frozen surface. While there, Ariadne thinks, if it was only this planet, this would have been enough. But then they go to the second planet, Mirabilis. On this planet, they find a world teeming with life. And they thrive in the following years, examining all the creatures, but when it comes time to leave, one of them gets on board, and Chikonni has to kill it, as it would have changed the ecosystem after the barrage of plasma that it had lived through. He ends up holding this in his memory and loses a lot of his joy, suffering guilt and a little bit of PTSD from all of this. The third planet, Opera, is a world covered in water and battered by storms, where they can't leave because the hull gets covered in these creatures that latch onto their hull and scream. After a few months, they eventually find a way to escape the planet, but several of those creatures die as a result, and Ariadne feels a mix of joy, happiness, but also self-loathing in feeling all that joy and finally getting free of the planet. And finally, on the final planet, Vodum, they find the beginnings of life and make a discovery that life is possible to create amino acids and proteins that fit both right and left to right equally. But all the while they are journeying to these 4 planets, they stop hearing from Earth. And they eventually discover that it's due to solar flares and the fact that tech has been wiped out. And they have no idea even if people have survived. They want to continue to learn. They want to continue to spread knowledge of these planets that they're finding and sending their logs back to Earth. But the book ends as they ask a simple question. Should they continue on? Because they know that if nobody's listening, if nobody's learning from what they're doing, it's just for their own self-satisfaction. So they ask the question, should they go on or should they return to Earth? And then they wait for a response.
All right. So, Ryan.
Yes.
What did you think?
I thought this was good. Earlier, you heard me hesitating when I was saying if you wanted a feel for Becky Chambers' writing style, you could start here. And the reason why I was hesitating is because in thinking about this story in comparison to the others, I think I like the Wayfarer series better.
I think so too. Again, I maybe this is a little unfair because this one's shorter, but yes, I think I like the other series better.
Yeah, I mean, it is a novella, so maybe it's the fact that they aren't really able to get into the different characters as much, although the cast is smaller.
Well, and there's an amazing amount of fleshing out happening even in what's here.
I will say that despite the fact that I say that I like the Wayfarer series better, that's not to say I don't like this book. Because I do like this book, and I think, as always, she gets into characters' minds very well.
Yep, I agree. The characters are a big part of this book. And while we're there right now, I think what's interesting is the audiobook reader who did this did well, to me it seemed anyway, and maybe I am ignorant enough to know, but she did seem to do a very good job with the voices, enough to add to the characters as well, I think. If the audiobook reader had read it flat, it still would have worked, but I think the fact that the audiobook reader added voices, well, accents to each character, I think it added a lot still as well.
Yeah, it felt like it added a tone to the character, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yes. It added emotion, for sure.
Yeah.
You could hear disappointment in the voice. I mean, the book said, the instruction followed. She spoke it in a disappointing way, and then Becky Chambers had said Jack was disappointed. It was read in the proper emotions, I felt like, too.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of the character development is in looking at some of the key moments that happen to some of the people. For example, on the second planet, Mirabilis, well, first of all, it's a planet which is just teeming with life. They're thrilled to be there because it's everything they've hoped to be investigating, everything they've hoped to get to research, essentially.
Right. Get a chance to see.
Exactly. And they spend 4 years, I think they said.
Was it 4 years?
I think so.
I thought it was months, but was it 4 years? Might have been.
I think they said they were planning on spending 4 years on each planet, but I might be wrong.
Still, I mean, I think they did spend a long time on that one. I just don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think it was 4 years, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, they spend a good amount of time on that planet just researching all these animals, diving into everything, and just being so full of happiness and joy and just thriving in it all. And then it ends with this emotional activity where they realize that there is one creature, one life form that ends up having snuck on board through the padding inside one of the crates.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The curiosity killed that guy.
Yeah.
Which is too bad.
And essentially because it had been breathing our oxygen, barraged with plasma, it had either mutated or it essentially would have wreaked all sorts of havoc on the ecosystem if it was reintroduced.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only option was for it to be killed. But the person who loves animals the most, who loves different organisms the most, who is the biologist, is the one who also had been responsible, according to Elena, for having that thing get in. And so was also responsible for taking it out. And the fact that that event, not only that was something that happened to him, but also the fact was it wasn't just a one-time pull the trigger and it's done. This creature, perhaps because it had been on a planet that was designed for heavier gravity, it withstood the electric shock. 1 time, and 2 times, and 3 times. I think it was 6 times before it finally stopped moving.
Yes.
And so the fact that this person who went to space, gave up their entire lives to study life forms on planets far, far away, ends up doing this, it breaks his heart. And throughout the rest of the book, that weight carries with him. And I think that's one of the things that makes me realize how good she is at conveying that sort of emotion in characters.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the heaviness was very good. The heaviness was in a few spots. I mean, definitely was that one. It was very difficult, and you could feel the difficulty, like you're saying. You could feel that difficulty that the characters were struggling with. Mm-hmm. It was not he was upset and leaving it at that. No, you could feel the toll that this was having on him. To a lesser extent, the toll that it was having on the rest of the crew, but still was having on the rest of the crew. And the same thing with their visit on the planet Opera, right? As much as Ariadne was trying to hide it in her writing, in her reporting of how she was dealing with the days, you could feel how much of a toll the screaming of those slugs on the side of the ship would just continue to take a toll on her.
I hear that and I just go, oh man, just imagine being barely able to sleep for about 4 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then finally getting the chance to get a moment of silence, a moment of that freedom. And that's going to elicit joy in anybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then tied with the fact that that probably meant the deaths of many of those creatures was where her character was divided. Her character was torn.
Yep, it was good.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of drawing similarities, this book was very episodic, mm-hmm. which is definitely similar to her others, especially in comparison to maybe the first book, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, where I feel like the scene breaks in that book, especially because it's like, well, they arrived at this planet and they did this, and they arrived at this planet and they did this, they arrived at this planet and they did this. Even in The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, although some things happen in between the planets in that book. But I feel like This is definitely they arrived at this planet and did this in this book. So I feel like this has the episodic feeling, especially of A Long Way to a Small Angular Planet. Like the structure's very the same. Whereas I think the other 3 books are a lot more, yeah, there are scenes, but there are scenes that tie directly to the plot. Whereas Long Way to a Small Angular Planet, it's a lot of setup. And I think this is kind of similar to that episodic setup stuff.
Mm.
Again, not that it's bad, it kept my interest because it was basically 4 world buildings going on here.
Yeah.
I feel like it's episodic, and I felt like it had a lot of ending tension, similar in the way that Galaxy had ending tension, but I felt like this ending tension was a lot deeper because it affected the main characters directly, whereas Galaxy was more of a concern ending tension, which was good and right, but well, like we were just saying, you could see how this was weighing on the characters, this tension that was going on the whole time.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, whatever decision got made, essentially there were 3 options that could have happened at the end of this book. There was Earth replies and says yes, Earth replies and says no, or Earth doesn't reply. And yes, they get to go on to the next planet and they send back their report and then they will probably die in space. No, they go back to Earth, they tell all about their trip, and then they die on Earth. No response. They never wake up from torpor.
I don't know. In some ways, I don't think it's a cop-out. I don't know. I was trying to figure. I thought that these characters would actually make a decision on that, one way or the other. I didn't think that these characters would really leave it to that, or at least set a default. Hey, if you don't respond within 5 years of us expecting you to get the message back.
Yeah.
Right. If we're going to account for the 14 years of travel back and forth, and then we're going to wait another 5 years. So after 19, 20 years, if we don't hear something, the ship is going to automatically go to the next place, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
I do think that these characters would have done something like that. I probably would have gone on.
They would have either gone on or they would have gone back to Earth. They would have done something. Because it comes down to one simple question. Do they think anybody has survived on Earth?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because if they think somebody survived on Earth and nobody's responding, they would probably think, oh, we should go back and help them rebuild. If they think that nobody has survived, then the other side of it is, what's the purpose in doing all this research? Who's going to be able to read and grow from this research?
But in some ways, I think, though, that even if nobody's there to read and grow in the research, I think they're curious enough to want to keep exploring.
Yes, and I think that is what they desire, but I think part of the reason they asked the question was because they were sent to do this research so that humankind could grow.
Right, and if humankind's not interested in growing in this area now...
Yeah. I don't know.
Yep. And my headcanon, I guess, is that humans probably did survive, at least some, but not enough to rebuild the technology that was already existing. Kind of a post-apocalyptic viewpoint there, that there's humans, they just don't know how to work or rebuild the technology. So would they ever rebuild an antenna large enough to catch the message coming from them, from their Lockheed 6 ship? I don't know. And when would that happen? Would it happen within 5 years? Would it happen within 10 years? I don't know.
Yeah.
The science discovery at the end.
Okay.
While they are super happy about it, I did not find myself as interested in it. I think that Becky Chambers did at least, I have no idea how accurate her description of this thing is. Mm-hmm. I think she did at least a passable enough job to make me understand it. I don't think it's anything that like, oh, I didn't understand it, therefore I don't like it. I don't think it was that. I just think I was not as, again, because maybe it's because it's distracting from the characters being the better part of the story. Oh, there's a science thingy here. Okay, you know what? The characters are more fun, so I'm more worried about their decision and what's going on with them next than I am with the science discovery that they made. Even if the science discovery is great for science. Maybe that's kind of where I am on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree it wasn't a thrilling discovery.
Right.
Because part of it is I understood the idea behind it, but I also was like, okay, well, great. I don't think that really affects how we understand life or how we understand
Because life on Earth won't change.
life on Earth won't change. I mean, even the life on other planets aren't going to change unless like we interfere with
even
it.
if they did transplant there, our bodies still wouldn't accept the wrong-facing,
Yeah.
wrong-handed amino acids or whatever. No, we're still going to only accept the ones that our body can accept. These guys would accept both, whatever these life forms they found, but our bodies can't.
Except for the fact that if they were transplanted on Earth, there would be only the kind that we all have on Earth. And so wouldn't they, by the nature of how survival of the fittest works, wouldn't they start evolving to accept primarily what was available for them? Namely, what we have on Earth? I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't change much. Yeah, it sounds fun and exciting, and I can see why scientists would get excited about it, but...
Yeah. Maybe it is because I am not a pure scientist. Maybe it is because I am not that person. Maybe somebody else really, like, this is a thing that is like, if this was true. But, yeah, I feel like it was one of those things for me that was just like, it's all right. It's interesting, but it didn't shake me as much as the character development shakes me.
That's a good way to put it. I think it was a good book. I'm glad to have read it. I'm glad to own it as an audiobook and an ebook.
I think it is a good book. It was very interesting, got some good character development in there. Yeah, I think it was a good read. I would recommend other people read it if they haven't yet. We've read her other things. We think those are good too. She hasn't screwed up yet, based on what we've read.
I think it was funny reading it a second time, knowing what's coming, right? Reading it again, like, I only remembered as it was getting closer. I was like, oh, right, this is the planet where something gets stuck. And then immediately as I remembered that, I was like, oh, yes, the next planet is the one where they're really... Which you just, I mean, yeah, like you were saying earlier, you just feel the weight of all of that as you're going through it. So, anyway, It was good.
Seriously. It is weighty is the best way to describe it. Weighty.
Heavy. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
I think one of the saddest things about this book is that it lost the Hugo Award to the How to Lose the Time War book.
What are you talking about? How to Lose the Time War deserved that Hugo.
Oh, yeah? Is better than this book?
Yeah. Hands down, in my opinion.
I would disagree.
Well, you can disagree, but you're wrong.
And apparently the Hugo panel agrees with you.
I know.
Not with me.
I think that this is a good book. I do not think that this is... If I were to rank it between this and How to Lose the Time War, I would give it to How to Lose the Time War.
That was the winner of 2020. So of 2020, How to Lose the Time War won, and this was nominated in the novella category as well.
And it's good to be nominated.
It is very good to be nominated. Congratulations, Becky Chambers. I think you should have won over How to Lose the Time War, but I'm not on the panel to vote, so it's too bad.
And I think while this is a good book, I thought How to Lose the Time War was a very valid winner and deserved it.
I can see how people would think that. Yep.
Just because you have wrong opinions doesn't mean that you have to force it on other people.
So what do you have for me next week, Ryan? Another book?
Yeah, I want you to read again.
I can do it.
You can do it? Good.
I have to squeeze it before I read the Psalm for the Wild Built.
Yeah. So you are going to read for me Equal Rights. We've read 2 Terry Pratchett books so far, right?
3.
We have? I had you read Mort.
We have to have read 3 books.
No, I've had you read Mort and Guards Guards.
That's it? No.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. This is the 3rd one.
No, didn't I read it?
You might have read one on your own.
I guess you're right.
Yeah, because I keep jumping series.
Right. I keep looking at the chart as if you're going to have me read more, but I don't think I ever... Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you see, what happens is you have this habit of going, all right, we're going to read this series. And I'm like, here's one book from this series. Here's one book from this series. Here's one book from this series. And you probably are getting very aggravated with the fact that I never allow you to finish a series. Well, I did finish one.
Yep. We finished Mistborn.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm going to have you start a new series.
Okay.
So, back in the Discworld world, I have said several times that there are many places in which we can start with Discworld. There are the Death series of books, there are the Night Watch series of books, and there are the Witches books. Well, I've had you read the first of Death, and I've had you read the first of the Night Watch. So I think that it's only appropriate that we read the first of the Witches books. After which, my plan is that I will ask you which one is your favorite of the 3 series that we will have read so far, and we will continue in that series.
Sounds good.
So the first book of the Witches series is Equal Rights, which is the story of the Discworld's first female wizard, and how she is guided by a bunch of witches to the Unseen Academy. And there are some other antics and some rather fun things, but I will leave that to your reading.
All right.
Look forward to Equal Rights. We hope you found something nice about this hill that we were willing to die on, and we appreciate all of our listeners coming along on this journey with us. And if you ever thought to yourself, I really like these guys and wish that I could do something to support them, you can. Visit myhilltodieon.com/members for more details. But what does it mean to be a member? Well, for the low price of $2 a month or $15 a year, you can help support this podcast. And you'll also get access to the members-only podcast, Not My Hill, where we discuss things that are probably somebody else's hill to die on. We have strong feelings about them, but they are definitely not hills that we'd be willing to die on. In addition to that, you will also get access to our suggestion form, where we will take suggestions from you on hills that we should check out and talk about on our Listener Hill episodes, where we will watch, read, or climb up the hill that you yourself are willing to die on and talk all about it. But know that the conversation doesn't have to end here. The discussion can continue with us through Reddit at the subreddit My Hill to Die On, or by contacting us through Twitter at My Hill to Die On. Or you can reach us by email, which is, to no one's surprise, myhilltodieon@gmail.com. Finally, we upload all of our episodes to our YouTube channel, which is also named, say it with me now, folks, My Hill to Die On.
Welcome to My Hill to Die On, episode 60.
Sorry, I was not anticipating that right away.
Oh, sorry.
Because I had not gotten there yet.
You can't do it from memory?
I can do it pretty close from memory, but my question is, how much are you willing for me to screw up lines?
To edit it later.
Let's see. Everyone has things that they're passionate about.
Things we want our friends to try and experience.
So we've convinced each other to try different things.
And we talk about these experiences to see if we can just get one more person
to join us on our hill to die on.
There you go. You did it from memory, huh?
I did it from memory.
Because I don't see him in the document.
That's because I was not signed into things, and apparently Google was asking me to two-factor again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was pulling out my phone and getting to the show notes and doing all that. There we go. All right. Hey, I'm in the show notes now.
Good. Welcome to the show notes.
Thank you. So what you're saying is we have book.
Book, yep. Mm-hmm. The next 6 ones are all books.
Lots of reading for us. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. I do feel like it is a good thing that we're doing as much reading as we are.
Well, I've read 3 of them already, so I'm good. Sorry. Well, and you've read...
I've read mine, but I'm going to be rereading
You've read 3
them.
of them, too. Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Except for this one, because I've recently read that one.
Yes. I have started now taking notes on books. Since I just finished Piranesi,
mm-hmm.
I did take a few notes on it. We just add a note to it since I'm looking at it and it's like, oh, I didn't put that note in yet. Okay. Yeah, I've started taking just notes on books I'm reading now so that I have it, because especially if, that basically finishing Piranesi, I'm like, no, I'm going to be bringing this one up. So then I sit down, take a few notes on it.
Yeah. I was questioning whether I was going to bring this one up, but for me, this one just ended up being like, I just
fun,
really
right?
enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a fun read.
Yeah, I mean, we're not from here.
Mm-hmm.
I think is not I can't say it's not an excellent.
I think I know what you're going to say. It doesn't rank as highly as some of the other ones you're bringing up, but it is a good book.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's fun. It has things to think about. It presents interesting sci-fi ideas. So anyway.
And I like the world that this builds. It's an interesting world, and I do like the voice in which it is written.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's a fun read. It is also, I think, the reason why it doesn't perhaps rank as high for me as some of the other ones I'm presenting is because it is a young adult book, and young adult books are written in a way that usually, like, doesn't hit as hard for me.
Right. Yep. That's the same kind of thing with, we're not from here.
Yeah. Anyway, or you can reach us by email, which is, to no one's surprise, myhilltodieon.com. I apparently can't talk anymore. myhilltodieon@gmail.com. Finally, we upload all of our episodes to our YouTube channel, which is also named, say it with me now, folks, My Hill to Die On. Wow, that was a train wreck and a half.
Good.